Hello and welcome. Today on Let's Start Cooking, we're going to be doing sticky buns. Now, we're going to do this in 3 parts because this is a little bit long of a recipe and I want to make sure that we get everything step by step for you guys. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to start out with the dough. And we're going to heat up our milk. We're going to add everything together first, wet ingredients, get the yeast going, and then we're going to add in our dry ingredients and we'll get everything mixed up for you. So the first thing we're going to want to do is you're going to take 1 cup of whole milk. Now you're going to want to heat this up, but you only want to heat this up to about 110 degrees. And you got to keep a careful eye on this because you don't want to scald this, you don't want to burn it. So what we're going to do is I have an instant thermometer. You can pick these up off of Amazon for like $3. If you don't have one, it's a lot nicer to have one. Don't listen to everybody say, oh, you can guess, and don't guess. So we're just going to let this heat up for a little bit. And once we get this heated up, we're going to add our yeast and we're going to add 1 tablespoon of sugar. And that just helps the yeast get started. So we're going to let this heat up and then we'll add our yeast. Now that we're waiting for the yeast, you're going to notice because you're going to see it's going to start to get a foam on top. And once that does that, we know that this is activated then. But in the meantime, we're going to take our dry ingredients and we're going to get them ready to go. So all we're going to do is you're going to need 4 cups of all-purpose flour. And we're just going to add that right in. We're going to need 5 tablespoons of regular sugar. You're going to need a half a teaspoon of salt. And we're just going to mix that up just to get everything combined a little bit. And then once we get this combined, we're just going to add our other ingredients and we're going to mix them up. And we can get this back on here. I have a dough hook. Now, obviously, if you don't have what I have, you can do this by hand. I've done it by hand for years before I got one of these. Doesn't take much. You're just really going to mix this stuff up, that's all. Now that our dry ingredients are in here, we're going to add our butter, which is 1 stick or half a cup. And this is salted butter. I'm not using unsalted. This is regular salted butter. And to that, we're going to add 2 large eggs. We're going to mix this up a little bit. We just want to get this all mixed up a little bit before we add our yeast mixture. Okay, we've reached 110 degrees and we immediately take it off because like I said, it heats up pretty quickly. We just want to get it off the heat. We're going to add our yeast right on in. We're going to add our sugar. And the reason you want to get this off the heat right away is because you can kill yeast pretty quickly if this is too hot. So we're just going to give this a little bit of stir. And we're going to set this to the side and we're going to let this do its work. And we're going to let this yeast come to life. And then as this is working, we're going to start with our dough. And now you'll know how your yeast is ready. You'll see how it foamed up. And this is letting you know that the yeast is actually woken up now and we're ready to add this in. So we're just going to add this into here, into our dry ingredients, and we're going to mix it up. All right, we're going to let this run, and we want to mix this up fairly well. This is probably going to take about 5 to 7 minutes, and we're going to stop this every once in a while because we want to make sure that we scrape off the sides. What you're looking for is you're looking to see how the dough actually pulls off the side of the bowl, and the bowl is fairly clean. This is what we're looking for. This is telling us that our dough is done. So we're going to stop this and we're just going to pull the dough out. And all we're going to do is we're going to transfer this dough into a bowl that we put oil in. Now you can use oil, you can use butter. You just want to coat this bowl because we don't want this dough to dry out. And we're just going to take the dough out of the bowl. Going to smooth this out a little bit. And the same thing now with dough, you have to be careful because the more you play with this and the more you knead it, the tougher the dough is going to get. And we don't want to get any tougher than this. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the dough in the bowl like this, and then we're going to flip it over because we want that dough to stay nice and moist. We don't want this dough to dry out. I'm going to cover this dough with a towel, and I'm going to stick it. I usually stick it in the oven. What I'll do is I'll turn my oven on for about not even a minute, and I let the oven get up to about maybe 100 degrees. I shut the oven off, and I put this dough in there, and I'm going to let this dough sit for about 45 minutes. It's going to double in size. Now, you can either put it in the oven like I do, or if you have a warm spot with no drafts, you can do the same thing. While we're waiting for our dough to rise, what we're going to do now is we're going to make the toppings for the sticky buns. And all we're going to do is we're going to melt down 1 stick of butter, which is a 1/2 cup. And once we get this melted down, we're going to add to it our 3/4 cup of brown sugar. And we're just going to whisk this in. And to that, we're going to add 1 teaspoon of vanilla. We're going to add 1 cup of heavy whipping cream. And we're going to whisk this up. And to that, then we're going to add a 1/4 cup of honey. We're going to whisk this up for about 2 minutes. We just want to make sure everything gets nice and whisked, and it should have a nice shine to it. Now, we don't want to boil this. We just want to get this nice and mixed up. Once you've gotten this mixed up, and we've heated this up for about 2 minutes, you're going to take a 1/2 cup of this, and you're going to separate it and save it for later. And you're going to take the rest of it, and you're going to take now I'm using just a square pan, but you can use a 9x13. I just coated the bottom of it. You can use butter or you can use non-stick spray, whatever makes it easier on you. I'm going to take this and we're just going to put some on the bottom of this pan. Now, if you have to use 2 pans like I'm going to have to do, because these are going to come out fairly nice size. And all we're doing is we're just getting this ready. Now, this is the point where if you wanted to add raisins or you wanted to add pecans or almonds or whatever you want to put on the top of them, now's the time you would sprinkle that in here before you actually put your rolls, your cinnamon rolls, sticky buns in here. And a sticky bun and a cinnamon roll are basically the exact same thing except for what I'm doing right now, which is the topping. All right, our dough is risen about twice its size. What we're going to do now is we're just going to take it out and we're going to do what they call kneading. And we're just going to press this down. And like I said, you don't want to work this too much, but you just want to get this nice and smooth, and we're going to get ready to roll it out. And like I said before on another video, this is where it's either fun or a mess, depending on what you feel. But once you get it to this point, we're just going to pat it down. Try to keep a half decent shape, because you're going to go now about 12 inches by 18 if you can. And we're just going to gently roll this out. And with pastry dough, it's a little different than pie dough, because with pastry dough, every time you roll, it wants to come back to its original shape. So it takes a little bit of time, but you'll get it. It's not that hard. And we'll get this rolled out. Once we get it rolled out to about the shape that we want, like I said, about 12 by 18. It doesn't have to be perfect because we can always trim it up when we're done. We took a 1/2 stick of butter and we just melted it. And what we're going to do is we're going to coat this whole thing now. And we just want to try to keep a 1/2 inch border around the outside edges, because we want this dough to be able to stick together. And we're just going to coat all this dough. Once we get all the butter placed down on the dough, we took 3/4 cup of sugar and 4 teaspoons of cinnamon, and we mixed it together. And all we're gonna do is we're gonna sprinkle this all over this dough now. And we wanna try to coat as much as we can. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. You just wanna coat as much as you can. I just sprinkled the rest of the sugar and the cinnamon on it, and then I took whatever butter I had left, I just sprinkled it on the top. And all we're gonna do is we're gonna pick it up, and we're gonna start rolling. And you wanna try to do this as tight as you can when you start. Once you get it going, it'll go pretty easy, but you wanna roll this up about as tight as you can. Just use your fingers like you're curling. And we're just gonna roll this all the way to the edge. When you get it this far and you have about a 1/2 inch left of your dough, I just wet my fingers and I want to go right along the edge of that dough, because what I want to do is I want to seal this dough. I don't want this to unroll on me when I'm baking it. So we're just going to take a little bit of water and just go right across. And then we roll the dough the rest of the way. And that'll seal that seam. All right. Now what we're going to do, we want to try to get about a dozen out of these. You want to use about 1.5 inches thick. So what I usually do is I usually try to stay about, I usually go about in the middle. And I usually go right down the center. And then I just go about, I figure about 1.5 inches. And again, they don't have to be perfect. Once we have them all cut, we put them in our pans. I'm going to put these back in my warm spot, whether you use an oven or a corner, and we're going to let these double again in size, or almost touching, about 45 minutes again. So we'll put them away, we'll let them rise again, and then we'll be able to bake them. We've had these in our warm spot. They've risen, as you can see, they're double their size. They filled this pan, and what we're going to do now is we're going to bake these at 350 degrees for 35 to 40 minutes until they're nice golden brown on top. So we'll get these in the oven, and 35, 40 minutes later, we'll be able to take them out and we'll show you what we have. In the meantime, if I ask, you knew this was coming. If you would like, subscribe, and share this channel with everybody. And if any of you happen to have a recipe that you'd like us to try, leave us a comment and let us know. And if we can, we'll try it. But let's get these in the oven right now, and we'll get them baked. 45 minutes, we took them out of the oven. We're letting them cool for about 5 minutes before we transfer them over to the pan. And all we're really going to do is we're just going to take our pan. We're just going to lay everything in here and slowly try to slide this to the side without. We just want to get under it. And we're just going to flip them over. And we'll watch them slowly pull out. And that's your sticky buns. Now we saved 1/2 cup of extra topping if you want to add sauce. So all we have to do now is if you just want to drizzle just a little bit over. And that's it. We'll let these cool a little bit longer before we try to actually cut one of these out. And there you have a sweet, gooey, sticky bun. Now join us on Sunday, and we're going to be making homemade crab cakes and homemade tartar sauce. So all the ingredients to this will be in the description, and I hope to see you on Sunday.